What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. But before we dive in, I got to tell you about my friends at Zone Pouches. And this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical, underage sale prohibited. If you're as competitive as I am, you're always looking for something to help you stay dialed in. And for me, that thing is Zone nicotine pouches. You won't catch me without it. Listen, I got the mint. I've been looking for the dragon fruit. My Chevron's out of it, but mint's. I think I'm playing golf tomorrow afternoon. I'll go through a 10 of these, no problem. But here's the great part: these have 20 pouches per can. Where the other guys, they only offer 15. So choose Zone and dominate the day. Use the promo code 3 and out. That's the number 3 and out 20 on nicokick.com/zone for 20% off at checkout. Well, we got some breaking news. Brian Daboll has been fired by the New York Giants. We will do a reaction video brought to you by my friends at Zone Pouches. I think the writing was on the wall yesterday. There was a report that went viral, at least that I saw in my Instagram feed over last week, that some local radio station in New York had heard, I don't know if it was their reporter or just a radio host on the show, that he was very, very close to being fired after the Denver collapse, and ultimately ownership was talked out of it by other ownership by the time the plane landed in New York, coming back from Denver. But yesterday when they lost, I think their fourth game that they had a 10-point lead. Obviously, they had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. But to me, the moment, there are two things that happened yesterday that are gonna, when a guy is fighting for his NFL career, right, in terms of his coaching career, 20, 40, and 1. That's Brian Daboll's record. So it's not like he has a lot of equity of winning. His claim to fame is that first year 9-7, got a playoff victory. It was actually pretty impressive. But then 6-11, 3-14, and now they're 2-8. So things are trending in the wrong direction. Two things happened yesterday. One, I don't blame them for running Jaxson Dart. It's clearly something that he's natural at. He's an instinctive runner. I mean, but when you run quarterback power over and over and over again, look at Cam Newton. Like, he broke down in his early 30s, and he is way bigger than Jaxson Dart. And obviously, Lamar Jackson is just way faster. When I think Jaxson Dart, I don't necessarily think a runner, though pretty good runner. I would have said the same thing about Caleb Williams. Now, Caleb Williams, you actually saw it in contrast because they were both playing, is built much differently. So when he takes hits, he's physically, it's like a lot like Russell Wilson. They're built like little tanks. You know, and Jaxson Dart's just taking some of these shots. He almost got a concussion a couple weeks ago when Daboll busted in the blue tent, an all-time moment so far this season. So that, anytime that you're the hope of the franchise, I mean, the entire hope of the franchise rests on Jaxson Dart. Not Malik Neighbors, not Cam Scatterbo, not all the defensive linemen, not Abdul Carter, Jaxson Dart. If he is good, the franchise is going to be fine. Period, point blank, full stop. Right? Look at the Jets. All these sweet players over the years, no quarterback, everyone's constantly fired, and the team blows. So if Jaxson Dart is good, the Giants can become relevant again. I think they're keeping their fingers crossed. They kind of strike oil with another Ole Miss quarterback. But obviously he gets injured, that's going to rattle you. But then the moment where he declined the penalty on the 1-yard line with 12 men on the field. Now, I get it. Like, every single snap you have to take with Russell Wilson is terrifying. Now, I think ownership would be like, well, you're choosing to make him the backup quarterback. Make Jameis the backup quarterback. Like, it's not like we have no other options. It's not like John Middlekauff is on the practice squad. You have another guy who has proven over the course of, how long has Jameis been in the league now? Almost a decade? Like, he can function definitely better and gives you more of a passing threat in 2025 than Russell Wilson. He's also way bigger, so if you're at the half-yard line, maybe he can get in, but they just refuse to make him the backup quarterback. So they go with Russell Wilson. He is scared out of his mind to run any plays. He was constantly running the ball when Russell was in. And once you decline that penalty, kick the field goal, which I'll be honest, I was wrong. I didn't think, not that it's not that crazy once I had time to look back, but it's like, hey, weather was awful. The Bears weren't doing that much on offense. You get a 2-score lead, you're probably going to win the game. But as we've learned, if you're the Giants, no lead is safe. So you blow that game in devastating fashion. So you blow another huge fourth quarter lead and you lose your quarterback. Like, if clearly it was true, there were already rumblings. I mean, the guy was kind of fighting for his job coming into the season. Then it felt like Jaxson Dart, the positive momentum, that Thursday night game against the Philadelphia Eagles. You're like, he's going to be okay. And then it's just completely unraveled. Then he gets injured, blows a lead, boom, he's done. Now Mike Kafka, my first year in Philadelphia, Howie and Andy drafted Kafka. So I've known him for a long time. I don't know him well. Say hi to him when I see him. Everyone likes him. Super high-level guy, Northwestern guy. Gets a 2-month kind of trial run, right, to be the head coach potentially. Now, I do think this job immediately is twofold. It's going to be very, very desirable. It's the New York freaking Giants, and they have a young quarterback who showed, even yesterday, in frigid temperatures. Now, Jaxson Dart's a Utah kid, so it's like you grew up in the Salt Lake City area, which I think is where he's from. Like, you're used to the cold. Like, it's not 78 degrees and sunny year-round. But then he goes to USC, Ole Miss. It's not like he had played his high-level football in college in inclement weather. But he showed yesterday, like, he actually looked very comfortable, especially throwing the ball, right? So I was actually blown away. Like, watching Caleb Williams, the arm strength, his arm is like Farvian or Josh Allen, pierces right through the wind and the cold. I thought Jaxson was doing the same thing. So that game in and of itself was a great kind of, hey, anyone want this job? Look what we have. So to me, Mike Kafka, if he rattles off some wins, surely they're going to like him. He's right up their alley. Highly educated guy, high-level cat, like kind of fits the Giants mold. Now, he's probably, I'd have to look up how old he is. My guess is a couple years younger than me, probably 38 years old. So rooting for him. But I do believe, now, when you look at the coaching options, because here's one other thing too. I'm just going off the cuff here. I didn't break this down what I want to talk about. I do think we question now, what's up with the GM? Like, does the GM survive? Does the GM get to pick the next coach? Because obviously, if a guy like Mike Kafka, I bet if you're the GM, you would love Mike Kafka to get this job and you could just stay with him. But who knows? Maybe Mike Kafka, if he got some juice, is he in with Joe Schoen? Is that the type of guy that he would want to be his general manager? But if it's not Kafka, what has Joe Schoen done to earn this job? Because a huge part of hiring these guys were they came as a tandem. And this is what always gets kind of fractured sometimes in the NFL and just pro sports when you lose. The coach is not around the owner on the game. The owner the GM typically is. Plus, the coach during the week is just grinding, right? And the GM is just doing a lot of administrative stuff. He's an administrator. He's talking to, the owners. I mean, that's just kind of his role, right? So I would imagine he's been working the back channels. He definitely wants to survive. It's an incredible gig to be the GM of the New York Giants. But depending on who comes in, I would say he's going to be fighting for his professional life. Not someone else would hire him. He'd be an assistant GM somewhere. But in terms of being a GM, like, not looking great. Even though he hasn't done a bad job, I do think, right, Abdul Carter, like, you don't get that much credit on that. And the Jaxson Dart thing, like, that is, if you're going to look at one positive that Brian Daboll left you, is he was the guy pounding the table. There was a video, and any Giants fan knows this. I think they had cameras like every team does now in the draft room. And Joe Schoen was like, we're going to get up and get your guy. So if for all the shittiness over the last couple of years, the one shining light and the one thing that he can leave you is like, I was the guy that pounded the table for Jaxson Dart. It's why I had said early in the season, I would think about just giving this a couple years just to see anytime you bring in a young quarterback and you get coaching movement and you get new schemes, it's a lot. And most guys are not like Peyton Manning, right? That can just overcome that. Most guys need some stability. Look at the best quarterbacks in the league. If you just go through like the top 10 guys, most of them have either had the same coach their whole career, Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, right? And some guys have gone through some turmoil. Justin Herbert's had some coaches. Look, Joe Burrow's had the same coach. Even guys like Dak Prescott for a long time early in his career, he had Jason Garrett. I think it was 4 or 5 years, maybe a little less than that before McCarthy came in whatever 2021. So I just think when you look at these situations, you always think about the quarterback first and like, is this going to derail them? But it got so bad, it got so ugly. They are so bad in these late quarter situations. In games they are winning. Like not just like, oh, we're winning by a point and we lost by a field goal. No, it's like we are in control of this thing. I mean, yesterday they were in complete control. Obviously, Russell Wilson, I don't think any player has done more to hurt his legacy than like the last several years of this Russell Wilson uh just run. It's crazy. I mean, yesterday it looks like at one point in time, if like Brady and Manning and peak Rodgers, those guys are like 10 out of 10s. Russell Wilson in his prime was like close to like a 9 out of 10, maybe 8.5. Like he was an elite player. He looks like a 0 out of 10 right now. Like he's unplayable. And this probably gets back to the owners like, why is he our backup quarterback? Why don't we just cut the guy? Why is he even around? I get he's a nice guy, right? And, it's not like he does anything bad, but this is a production-based business. We cut players all the time. It's like a right guard. He can't block anybody. Well, he's cheap. Well, get rid of him, right? This corner can't cover anybody. He sucks. See ya. Yet sometimes with the quarterback, people are very precious with that position. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. We talk a lot of football here on 3 and Out, but there's so much more to bet on. The NBA is obviously in full swing. I was watching Michigan State and Arkansas play basketball. College hoops is back. Even the NHL is rock and rolling. So if you haven't tried your first bet yet on Hard Rock Bet, there's still time for you to get 150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you not only get your winnings, but an extra 150 in bonus bets. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app is the only legal sportsbook for whenever you're in Florida. And it's also live in Arizona, Ohio, Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado. So download the Hard Rock Bet app today and make your first deposit. And yeah, so Jaxson Dart is going to be looking for potentially a new coach. Obviously a new coach this season, unless Mike Kafka can kind of keep the gig. But I think this immediately becomes a very, very desirable job. And you saw last year, like, the power in which the Patriots had having Drake May. Obviously, they had the connection with Vrabel, but that was a job that people were very, very interested in, right? The reason Ben Johnson, obviously, it's the Chicago Bears, but like, hey, we got this young guy who's drafted number 1 overall. I don't even know if he fits my scheme. I honestly didn't believe that he does, but he's definitely more talented than most guys I ever get to work with, so I'm going to take the chance. And I think Jaxson Dart is one of those guys that people are going to be lined up for this job. Obviously, coordinators all around the league are going to want it. I've been saying forever, let's face it, we all watched the game last night. The Pittsburgh Steelers are in shambles. Like, they are not very good. If you remove that Indianapolis game, where they were actually kind of getting worked, and the Colts were driving 7-0 in the first half, and then TJ Watt made the play, and then the floodgates open. Beside that stretch of like 3 quarters, the Bengal game, they didn't stop a nosebleed. In the Packer game, the second half, they got throttled. And last night was simply embarrassing. And I also think it brings into light, like, Aaron Rodgers, 41 years old. And everyone's like, he looks so good. It's like, yeah, he has a huge arm. He will be, Dan Marino could throw it 75 yards right now. It's like, he's 41. Does he want to get hit? That was in a controlled environment. What's it going to look like when it's snowing, when it's freezing cold, and he's playing some of these outdoor games? When Myles Garrett's peppered his ass a couple times. I said it last night. I don't blame him. Like, if I was 41, had that much money, newly married like my man Aaron, it's like, I'm not doing this. And like I said it last night on the reaction show, I think that the Baltimore Ravens could be in first place by the time they play at the end of this month. The Ravens' next 3 games, I think, are the Browns, the Jets, and the Bengals. They are going to be, I haven't even looked at the line this week, but they're going to be heavy favorites in all those games. By the time they play the Jets, they could be like a 10-point favorite in 2 weeks. And going into that game, they'll be 5-5, assuming they beat the Browns. You never know. Divisional games can get weird. We just saw with the Dolphins and the Bills. But one name that jumped right to mind, everyone has been clamoring for this guy. Clearly, these universities are lined up. LSU, Florida, they want Lane Kiffin. Ole Miss is desperate to keep him. Well, Lane Kiffin coached this guy. And I do wonder if Lane is like, clearly he's found a rhythm, and college pays a lot. It's a great gig. But it's like, do I want to deal with the transfer portal nonstop? Do I want to have this life? Now, he has also mentioned on the E60 that, the lifestyle of the South clearly fits him. The New York lifestyle is a lot different, but there's something about like coaching royalty. Like you become a legend coaching in some of these markets. It ups your stock. Like coaching LSU in Florida is awesome. And I love the SEC as someone that, you know, never lived in the South, didn't go to school down there, did get married in Nashville. The Vandies, I think what are they, 7-2 right now, or 9-2, 8-2? So they're rolling. But I just think Lane Kiffin, you got to have some interest because now he's making $10, $11 million, and people are going to be willing to pay him $13 million. They were probably paying Brian Daboll 5 or 6, which isn't nothing. But if you're Lane Kiffin, it's like my interest of probably starting $15 million. And then you start looking around the rest of the league, like, doesn't really feel like there's a Mike Vrabel. That's where back to the Steeler thing of they're in shambles. If they miss the playoffs, how is this Mike Tomlin thing going to continue? And if you're Mike Tomlin, doesn't that make a lot of sense? They got a young quarterback. They got some defensive pieces. I said this last night. I've been fired a couple times. Best thing that ever happened to me. Talk to any human being. That, like, why do you get asked at the combine, like, when have you been through any adversity? What's the toughest thing you've ever been through in life? You know why? People, when they're employing you, they want to hear what you've been through because not everything is great, right? When life's going well, when any industry you're working in, you're making a ton of money, you're in the honeymoon phase of a relationship, anyone can do that. What's it like when shit hits the fan? Usually where you learn something about yourself. Also, it's usually where driven people can kind of separate, especially coaches. How many guys got fired early? Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, Andy Reid was fired in 2013. How'd that turn out? It is a healthy situation for a lot of coaches, especially when you're a guy like Brian Daboll is not going to become a head coach right now. No one's hiring to be their head coach. Mike Tomlin's fired. He's going to be a head coach, right? So he's going to have options. And to me, the New York Giants, is right up his alley. So to me, if you're the Giants, you start looking at, that kind of makes some sense, right? I would say Lane Kiffin, Mike Tomlin, assuming that the Steelers don't make the playoffs. And based on last night and based on the previous month, how could you feel confident about that? I said it before. I was wrong. I'm doing the math. They're 4-1. The Baltimore's 1-5. You're like, it's just the math doesn't math. How are the Ravens? And it's like, well, the maths now. One team's trending like this. The other team's trending like this. One team's got Lamar Jackson. The other got a 41-year-old guy that does not want to get hit. I'm like, I know who I'd bet on. And there's a reason the markets never flinched. They never stopped making the Baltimore Ravens the favorite to win that division. And at one point in time, it's like, this feels a little crazy. But no, it actually doesn't anymore. Makes a lot of sense. I'm on board. I agree. And you're just not keeping your job if you miss the playoffs. And I don't think you're making the playoffs at 9 wins. Because if you look at it, I think the Chargers right now are technically in the 6th seed, or the Bills are in the 6th seed at 6-3. And the Bills play the Steelers. Well, what do you think is going to happen in that game? Look at the Steelers' schedule. So they got the Bengals coming up, which I'll give them a win. Let's say you split with the Bengals. Then you go to the Bears. You think Rodgers is going to want to play in that environment? You know how cold it looked yesterday? Then they play the Bills. Then they play the Ravens. The Dolphins. It's like, well, I saw the Dolphins yesterday. It looked pretty good. At the Lions. Shit. You ain't winning that game. You still got to go to the Browns. 12-28. What do you think the weather's going to be like in that game? Sunny? Warm? It's going to be fucking freezing, windy, sleeting, snowing, and then they finish with the Ravens. So I think the Steelers are in major trouble. And to me, Mike Tomlin and the New York Giants, I got that thing circled. Lane Kiffin is kind of the wild card. It would be a pretty big career move just because one thing we've seen is there are no similarities between the two industries beside calling plays or whatever. But the actual job is completely different. And we have seen a lot of guys try to go from pros to college. Look at Belichick. It's just way different. Now, in going from college to the pros is also way different. So while Lane Kiffin's dad is an NFL legend, he has been coaching in college really his entire career beside his little stint with Al Davis when not only was the world different, I don't even think Twitter or, YouTube, did any of those things exist back in 07 and 08? And definitely the NFL is dramatically different. So I would say that's a name to keep an eye on. And then obviously just the other kind of random coordinators throughout the league. But if I'm the New York Giants, and I think they desperately tried to stay patient, right? They had fired so many guys after Coughlin, from McAdoo to Shermer to Joe Judge. They've just been running through, and they didn't want to look like, they're the Cleveland Browns or whatever. You just kind of acknowledge you kind of have been. And part of not being that is hiring and letting some of these agents, like, hey, I got this guy. He's the quarterback special teams coach. My answer is, I don't give a shit. I need a real coach. Look at Robert Kraft. He's like, Mayo, you got to pack up and go. We're getting a guy that knows what he's doing. Mike Vrabel, boom. What are they going to win? 13 games? Right. It does not feel there is a Ben Johnson right now in at the different coordinator jobs. So, and even Ben Johnson, right? Like, people will throw out some hot names like Clint Kubiak, for example. Clint Kubiak was just fired for the Saints a year ago, right? Ben Johnson had like 3 years of work of like, I'm an elite. I mean, hell, he was turning down jobs 2 years ago. So if I'm the Giants, I need a guy with head coaching experience. I approach this like I'm Penn State or Florida. Like, no more taking some big swings, or no more taking some big risks, right? I need a guy that at minimum is going to work, right? And listen, there is no guarantee. Hiring a coach is a lot like drafting players. Because I would have said, hey, listen, I don't know if Brian Kelly's ever going to win a championship, but like, what's the worst you're going to be? 10 wins every year? Turns out, no, you're not. You're going to have some 8 and 9 win seasons, right? You're going to have some problems. So there is no guarantee. Just because Mike Tomlin's available, right, doesn't mean that you're just going to win, 12 games in 2 years. But, like, at least it can stabilize your franchise, because they do feel very unstable. And if I had to make a recommendation over what I've seen, especially in a division with how he's rolling, the Cowboys have a lot of ammunition to just revamp their team and revamp it fast. And they've already added a couple defensive linemen in Clark and Quinn Williams. If they have a big offseason and signing some defensive guys and hitting on a couple draft picks, ton of defensive pass rushers in this draft, like, they could be much more feisty. And at the end of the day, Washington is horrendous right now, but they still got Jaden Daniels. So if he's healthy, like, they're going to be a problem. I just think you need to get a real coach. And this ends the Daboll era officially in Chicago. Another devastating loss. And my guess is he's probably an offensive coordinator somewhere next year. But yeah, it sucks. I mean, I think if he could have one do-over, even more than the Bronco game where he probably should have just ran the ball, was yesterday. I think he still has a job if he just accepts a penalty. And what's the percentage chances in the NFL? Especially, I mean, the Bears defense had not been that great at the half-yard line, scoring a touchdown. And he wasn't willing to do that because he didn't trust Russell Wilson. So in a weird way, Russell Wilson helped get him fired. Russell Wilson's got a lot of offensive coaches fired over the years. A lot of guys in Seattle. I mean, Pete just fired a special teams coach the other day. Pete fires coaches. Obviously, Nathaniel Hackett got thrown to the Wolves. He never should have been there in the first place. And now Daboll. So I feel for you New York Giants fans. It has been, if you look now, it was not great the last couple years of Coughlin, if I remember correctly. But you guys are on a pretty tough little stretch here. 2016, when you had McAdoo, I think that was the Miami boat. From 17 till 25, 3-13, 5-11, 4-12, 6-10, 4-13. The bright spot of 9-7, 9-7-1. Then the last 3 years, 6-11, 3-14, 2-8. I feel for you guys. So I guess at least now, not just with Dart, but now you have some hope of getting a new coach and the fun and the optimism that brings with it.